Hello, Chill Computer Guy. Today we're in Bitwig 2.4. We're going to talk about the multi-sampler. This is part 2 of the 2.4 sampler.
Why didn't you kill him? You're weak. You're jealous. I don't need you anymore.
Check it out. It's the multi-sampler. Let's check this out full screen. There it is, the multi-sample full screen. What's great about this is you can see the sample there. You can rearrange the window however you want. You can actually even make that one disappear. Not only that, but in this new multi-sampler, you can zoom in so you can see the keys very clearly. You can also drag this over. You can pretty much customize this however you want to the side here. So there's two different views here. There's the straight up and down, and then there's the horizontal view here. There's the keyboard along the top now. You can see your velocity layer as well as your select layer. Okay, and we're going to talk about the select layer in a little bit here. You can see what's nice about this is we can kind of stretch this whatever way we need to stretch it, and you could click on each sample, and then down below here in the lower grid you're going to have all the same options you have in the main sampler window. In other words, you can set your root key, you can set your key tracking, you can set your gain, you can snap to your 0 point, you can set your reverse play, your in and out point, your loop marker, forward, 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 back. You can set your crossfade. What's nice about that is you can actually close this guy down, and go full screen, because you have all the same controls in this window that you have in this window. In fact, now that you're in multi-sample mode, you pretty much have to rely on this window for individual controls. As far as the actual sampler, it's going to look pretty much the same. It doesn't matter really what you do as far as multi-sample mode. Now we're going to go around the interface, talk about the icons here. First off, you can save. If you click this folder here, you can save your sample. You can set up some tags, some keywords. You can name it whatever you want to name it. So you can save that, and when you do save that, when you save this multi-sample, you're going to save all the samples within it, the multi-sample, the layering, and all the groups within it. Now to the right of that is groups. You can actually set up groups. Right here is a new group 1. You can go, let's say control select a couple of these and actually drag them into that group. There you go. And now you'll see a little red tag. That symbolizes that those are now in this group 1. So
I've had enough. Tell me yourself.
If you think about it, this is very, very powerful, being able to select different groups. Now you can sort the sample based on the key, the velocity, or the select. The key, the actual key on the keyboard, the velocity, which is how hard you hit the key, and then the select, which is the select potentiometer down here. That's when this comes in, is this select potentiometer. That's going to basically scan through when you're in this mode. This is your select parameter. So if you switch all these up a little bit, let's say switch all these up, and then you hit, let's say you stretch all these so there are multiple keys, let's say, okay? Even though that's going across all 3 samples, your select is going to be this first one. As I move this select potentiometer up, it's basically like moving a slider, although you can't visually see it, but it's like moving a slider along the top here, okay?
You're jealous. You're jealous. Why didn't you go? You're jealous.
So that's how the select key works. Now, if you're doing the velocity, similar thing, but it's going to be based on how hard you hit the note. Now let's talk about dragging samples into the multi-sampler. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this, and there's a lot of subtleties here. Let's go ahead and shift-click a bunch of these samples. Now when we drag them over, if the closer we are to the keyboard, okay, so right above the keyboard, each individual sample will occupy a single key. As we move up, the samples are going to get wider and wider until each sample is going to cover more than one key. Of course, all the way up, that means the sample is going to cover the entire keyboard. So the important thing to remember is in this mode, basically your x-axis is your keyboard, and then your y-axis is actually going to be your velocity. So 1 all the way up to 127. Now you can change this over here and make it your select parameter as well. basically, if I want to make it so, the velocity these samples come down, I can either lasso them and drag them all at once, or I can just grab each individual sample. Once it's selected, I can pull the velocity down and do things that way. So something that's very important to remember is you can always go down here and right-click and hit clear, and that's going to dump all your multi-samples. Let's go ahead and load up some more multi-samples. Now, something that I actually just discovered the other day is if you go ahead and select a bunch of these multi-samples, let's say, and you drag them over, instead of dragging them into here, if you just drag them down there and just drop them, they will automatically, by default, start on C1 and occupy one key apiece.
At the moment, you can't.
Which is actually a really, really good kind of a default behavior, because C1 on most MIDI keyboards, unless you have your octave adjusted up or down, C1 is going to be the key on the far left.
At the moment, when you come around, at the moment, however, you can't. At the moment, come back, you can't. At the moment, however, you can't.
Now come along.
And again, remember, we can click on monophonic right here, okay?
I'm going to speak. Come on, let's get the hit.
Now there's no way to click more than one sample at a time, so do remember that. There's also single trigger and then steal key, and then you can put this up to, let's go with 138 milliseconds.
Will you cooperate with the foreign police? Come on, let's get the genius of evil. I'm going to speak with a very slight.
And now come along.
When you have had enough traveling for a while. I'm going to speak with a very slight. Lunch at the room. Listen carefully. Come on, let's get the hit. When you come around.
Something you're going to notice is if these are gray, they're not selected. If they're blue, they're selected. Okay, once they're selected, you're going to see a waveform down below. Of course, you can, make this bigger. There's also this icon right here, this MIDI icon. This is a very valuable icon. If you click on that, whatever key you hit on the keyboard will automatically select that sample. Cool.
Come on, Hong Kong. Lunch.
I'm going to
Genius of evil.
Come on, let's. Hong Kong.
It was
Will you cooperate with the foreign? Will you cooperate?
I'm genius of evil.
lunch.
I'm going to speak with a
You
very.
can't fail.
I'm going to speak with a very slight.
I mean, how cool is that? That's pretty sweet. Now, you can see that our velocity along the side, and then we also have our select along the side. If you want to basically make it so there's a velocity, a different velocity for every single sample. Now, you wouldn't normally do this. This is kind of an abstract concept, but it's something you can do in the new zones parameter. You can see that we can distribute keys equally, we can distribute velocity equally, or we can distribute, the select equally. Let's go ahead and go with velocity and see what it did is it selected a different velocity for each individual sample. Now, like I say, you wouldn't normally want to do this because it's kind of, you'd have to have the exact key and the exact velocity for the sample to play. So this is just, I'm just showing you this for an example, but you can see that they're all blue, meaning they're all selected. So now you can actually pull this down and see what it's doing there. Look at that. That's a beautiful thing. Not only that, but you can go up from the top and pull these down. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to reset all these, which is kind of annoying. But the way I found to do it is if you go ahead and hit one sample, hit Control-A or click on this Select All. And then if you go to the far right, pull this all the way down, go to the far left or the first sample, last sample, pull all the way up, now you're reset. Okay, so now you have your velocity layer and your one on each individual key.
At the moment, you can't.
At the moment, however.
We're going to talk about this guy. You have your vertical and you have your horizontal, okay? This is very, very important to understand this because vertical is basically all the keys. It's going to show all the keys of your keyboard. It's going to show what samples on each individual key. That's great, but if you look at this in a vertical sense, you can see it's kind of like this, okay? But let's say I want each key to play every single sample. Just humor me here, okay? I'm going to select one, select all, okay? Then I'm going to go to the first one, pull that all the way over, go to the last one, pull that all the way over. So now you can hear that the samples in the multi-sampler are assigned to all the keys. Every single sample's assigned to all the keys. So when I hit a key, It's going to play like 8 samples. The reason it's playing 8 samples is because my voicing is probably set to 8. Now there's no actual way to right-click and reset the selection equally. There's only a way to distribute it. So maybe a way to maybe reset these. So would be kind of nice. Now let's go to that same thing. Same thing with velocity. We can distribute velocity equally. And now the sample that gets played is going to be based on how hard you hit the note. If you hit a hard note, it's going to be way at the bottom. If you hit it very soft, it's going to be the first note. This is a really good way. What I do is I put a bunch of hi-hats in here, and then you make slight adjustments to the velocity. And not only the volume, but the slight pitch adjustments. That'll keep your hi-hats real, real human sounding. So that's pretty much the distribute property. Remember that you can either hit Control-A or click one sample and then hit this select all parameter up here. And also, there's no way to reset this velocity curve. The easiest way I found to do it is hit select all. The very top one, drag to the right. The very bottom one, drag to the left. And then you're pretty much all reset there. Okay, and then the other option is to distribute keys equally, just like so. And that's basically the default, where each individual key will be a different sample. Now, you'll notice I can stretch this out, okay? And you'll notice this shaded area. The shaded area is going to be the root, okay? That's going to be the root of the sample. Now, something I did want to mention is the inspector panel has taken on way more importance here, Bitwig 2.4. The inspector panel in 2.4 has been really, really quite upgraded. You can hit the instrument, and it's going to show all your, all your play modes and all your modulation. Or you can hit a sample, and that's going to show individual sample parameters. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you can set a group. And groups, if you think about it conceptually, groups are very, very powerful. Let's say you make a new group. You can select a color for the group. You can name the group whatever you want. Okay. And then once you click back to the all zones, you'll see that if you click on a sample here, you can actually assign it to the group right there. Okay. And you can see when you selected that, it gave you that little blue icon there. So now you know that that's in a group. So if you think about this, open up a multi-sample, right? An empty one. Everything's the default. You start to drag stuff in. You start to group stuff. You start to, the sky is really the limit with this multi-sampler. It's unbelievable. Let's add another group just for the heck of it. Go over here, super. This one, we're going to make this one a tan color. Go back to all zones. So you can control click a bunch of these, and go up here, super duper, and so you've added multiple samples to the group. And so the inspector has become incredibly important here in Bitwig 2.4. Now, another nice thing that I wanted to mention about the multi-sampler is the keyboard. If you don't want to use a key, you can always, the keyboard that it actually shows in the multi-sample view is active, so you can click it. So you can kind of play your sample from up here, which is kind of cool. I'm going to get rid of the rest of these. I have way too many samples. Let's go ahead and delete these. Again, you can shift-click if you want to select them out. Just hit delete to delete those. So like I say, let's go ahead and select the sample. We can select a group up here, and then below there, we're going to have our 3 different categories. We have our key select, our velocity select, and our select select. Okay, remember the select select is based on this potentiometer right here. Okay, so the ability to create kind of like layers and go from one layer to the next layer is pretty powerful with this select potentiometer. Scrub this amount and see right there visually what's going on. And the same with velocity. Right now we're looking at the velocity layer. You can see all velocity right there. And as you scrub this, you can actually see it's reflected visually in the multi-sampler. Okay. Same with the select. If you're on the select parameter, You can see that visually as well. So again, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. You know, you can come up here and like drag this, or you can come in here and scrub this, okay? So two ways to do. Now the fade is something that I wanted to talk about as far as like, let's say velocity here. If you hold down on Alt, you'll get that this little icon here with the double arrow in the curve. That is that's your fade right there, okay? So that's how you do it. If you want to hold down on Alt and do that, you can do that here. Or you can actually do it right here as well. Create a fade right here. Fade it in and out. And where that becomes really powerful is if you think about if we come across, let's say, both of these right here. And so this is a really, really powerful way of layering. I mean, this is, when it comes to layering and the subtleties of layering, I'm getting pretty excited about, you know, this. Like here's even a more dramatic thing. And you can put these fades as wide or as deep as you want. I'm just going to go ahead and slide these all over there. There we go. You know, you can do the same thing with the velocity. So, you know, if you're hitting the key with a certain weight, it's going to trigger both samples. If you hit the key soft, it's only going to trigger the one sample. If you hit the key hard, it will trigger the second sample more than the first sample. The only thing this really doesn't work with is the select potentiometer, because that's pretty much binary. It's either on or off, really. I mean, I guess you can have the fade represent multiple spots, you know, but the sample's either going to play or it's going to not play. And so there's as far as if you want to layer and control the volume with the different octaves, like if you want one octave to be
At the moment, however.
That and the other octave to be
At the moment, however. Gained its best
that's even too far right there, I think. Yeah, you need to come in a little bit. Oh, I need to bring that whole sample in. So
at the moment, however, and the secret police gained it. And the secret police gained it at the moment, however, and the secret police and the secret at the moment, and the secret police gained its best operator. At the moment, however, gained its best operator. And the secret police gained its best operator.
So you can see how the ability to fade the two samples and blend them together based on what key you hit or what velocity you hit the key. I mean, it's all very, very cool and very, very magical. And again, you can drag it visually or you can adjust all that. So again, those are the three zones. Very important to understand. We have the velocity zone, we have the select zone, and then we have the actual key, what key the sample's on. So those are the three zones up above there. One more quick thing. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and delete this real quick. And I'm going to hit 1 and hit Control A, or I can select right here. Control A is a very good shortcut. We're going to drag these so now they're on all the keys again. Now below the key, the velocity, and the select, the fades and all that, below those three categories is the logic, the zone logic. This is a very powerful thing to understand. Right now, it's on always play, meaning when I hit the key, all of them play. Now, what you want to do is this is an individual sample. So this is something where you can lasso all these, and now we're going to switch this to round robin. The only option is always play or round robin. Now, round robin is going to switch the sample with each key.
But you can't. It looks as if.
And now come along.
When you come back from you the most dangerous. I've had enough. If you'll own, I'm going to say genius of it, not law. Come on, let's get Hong Kong. It was, but you can't.
Just like it says, each key is gonna go down. It's gonna do a round robin. When you get to the end, it'll switch back over. You know, I'm just hitting the key over and over, and that's the round robin mode. Now, if you want to take, let's say, a couple of these samples, you can hit select, click, and switch those over to always play. Now they're going to disregard that round robin. So now all the samples are playing round robin, but those are playing all the time. And so again, we're talking about layering This is very, very powerful when it comes to layering. If you think about layering, that is a very good way to do it. Okay, let's go ahead and right click, and we're going to distribute keys equally back like that. So that's pretty much it. That's the way the zone logic works. Think of the zone logic as if you are playing more than one sample at a time on the key. So if you have multiple samples on the same key, the zone logic is going to apply. Now, another thing about the zone is these three parameters here. These are basically ways to modulate parameters anywhere in your chain based on what zone is being played. Okay, let's say zone parameter 1. All this stuff is local to whatever sample you have selected. Okay, so you can see if I'm on the first sample and I set Z parameter 1 to 62%, and then I switch, it's back to 0 because that is specific to that sample. Now the zone parameter 1 is connected to this P1 down here, okay? This is param 1. I would actually prefer if this was Z1, but P1 works. So zone parameter 1, 2, and 3. So now if I click on this, I can modulate. Let's go ahead and modulate the pitch just because it'll be real obvious there. And then let's click on that again. So now every time I play this first sample, it's going to modulate 62% of this zone parameter 1. And there's 3 of them there. Think of these are just kind of auxiliary modulators. So if you want to make sure that when you're hitting a certain zone on your keyboard, something is being modulated in any device in the chain, you can do that. So you can see when I hit that key, the Z parameter goes 62%, which is right here, and then your pitch goes up.
It looks as if the boys, it looks as if the
And you can see that no other zones,
it looks as if the boy.
no other zones are being affected but that first zone, because that parameter is specific to that particular zone of the keyboard. So that's the way the zone parameters work. Again, it's just an extra thing as far as, Bitwig's all about the modulation, and this is just an extra way to modulate things based on what zone you're at on your MIDI keyboard. And again, you don't have to use these in the multi-sampler. You can use them anywhere in Bitwig. Just ways to modulate based on the key you're hitting on the keyboard. So below the zone logic is the root key. You can set the root key, and notice that that little kind of slashing pattern there. That represents your root key. So you can see we can move that around. We can do some fine tuning. Plus 100, minus 100. Key tracking, we can set the level of key tracking that happens. Key tracking right there. And again, we can do that same thing down here. Bitwig's all about having multiple ways to do the same thing. We can adjust the gain here. And of course, we can visually see that there. And so, yeah, a lot of these parameters as far as the root key and all this stuff are the same as these parameters here at the very top of the sampler here. Play start, that's the starting position of your sampler, and then the end part, which is the yellow flag. And then your looping. We can click this in reverse, and then we can do all the looping options, which are the options that we talked about in part 1 on the sampler. So pretty much everything from the root key down corresponds with all these adjustments that we can make in the sampler window as far as the play start, the play in, the direction we're playing, and then the looping. Is it forward, 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 back, and then the loop start, the loop in, and finally the crossfade. So pretty much everything can be adjusted in the inspector panel, or we can go ahead and adjust them right here in the multi sampler. Now, a few things to keep in mind. If you modulate anything on any parameter now, if you click on that instrument, you're going to see the modulation on the left, okay? Right here, you can see that the pitch has been modulated. What I love about this is when you click on the device or the instrument, you're instantly going to know where your modulations are at. You can see that this is modulated 2.8. Not only that, but you can scrub that value. So you can adjust the modulation right there in the inspector, or you can just click the X and completely delete the modulation. But you used to have to right click and then come down here and hit the X here, but now you can just do it right there in the inspector. Super powerful, super handy. A couple other things. There's this little menu here. You can sort the zones by name, which is the default, or if you want, you can sort them by velocity, key select velocity, velocity key select key, select key velocity, and select velocity key. These are pretty much all these are all combinations. Basically, you have your key, your velocity, and your select. Okay, your key, which is over here on the left, and then your velocity, which is this little icon here, and then your select, which is that little icon there. And remember, it's very easy to, click on one and click up select all. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just click on one and hit Control A. Right click, distribute keys equally. Right click, distribute velocity equally. There's your velocity. Or you can do your select, distribute select equally, And so now everything's equally distributed, horizontal and vertical. And then if you, if you look at your vertical, that's a good way to reset, is you go to your far left all the way up, your far right all the way down, and then that will reset the value pretty much. It would be nice to be able to right click and reset, but that's the quickest way I've found to do it. That's it. That's pretty much the multi-sampler in a nutshell. Again, remember the select all is going to be very handy. So put that in your edit toolbar, your select all. If you don't want to click on that button, you can also select one sample, hit Control A, and then you can right click. You can distribute keys equally. You can distribute velocities equally, or the select parameter equally. Remember, the select parameter is this potentiometer down here. If you're confused by it, just remember that as you're playing, as you turn this,
and now come along.
It's going to slowly move, visualize a slider across there. And as you turn this knob, the slider's going to the right. Okay? Very similar to, again, Ableton. Ableton has this where you, a selector thing. But in Ableton, you can visually see the selector moving across the top of the screen as you move the selector. Something visual would be nice. That way I could tell what sample I'm on, maybe in a future update maybe. But no complaints whatsoever about this sampler. This sampler is unbelievable. I love the way you can resize everything. Our sample window, we can resize that. We can resize this thing. We can actually make that completely disappear if we want. The velocity and the select curve, we can make them disappear. How do you do? Can you click on it? It's one or the other. How do you make it disappear? See, if I drag it over, they're both, they're both grayed out. Well, that's pretty cool. So you can make them disappear if you drag it all the way over. And then, of course, this window, you can make it a floating window. So if you want your multi-sample to be in a floating window, you can do that. Something that's very unique that I just found out just this second, why not share it with everybody, is, look at that. The inspector is part of the floating panel. How cool is that? So if we close this, then we're just back to here. We can open that and it stays the floating panel. Oh, that's incredible. Or of course we can dock it there, which I love. I can't stand floating panels. I love the fact that we can dock pretty much everything in Bitwig Studio. That's a big plus. I don't know, is there anything else? You can save this. And it will save all the samples. It will save all the samples, all the settings, all the velocities. It'll save everything. You can use your tags. You can use your metadata. You can name this whatever you want. Your description. Oh my gosh, this description. You can go crazy with this. You can go crazy. Whoops, did I save that? I think I saved that. Oh crap. And then these are groups that you can create. Something that I did notice is, let's create a new group real quick. I wanted to show you something. Something I noticed here, Bitwig, and keep an eye on this is, let's say we go to all zones, right? Let's click a couple of these. Okay, there's 4 samples there. I want to right click. I'm going to hit copy. Okay, check this out. I hit copy. Now I'm going to go to my brand new layer here. And then I come over here and I hit paste. Nothing happens. I don't know why, but nothing happens. See what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying, Bitwig? I go to all zones. I select a couple of these. I hit copy. Okay, maybe I'll come over here and hit copy. Copy. I go to the new, and then I hit paste, and just nothing happens. I don't know. That's something I noticed, which yeah, I don't know if that's a glitch or what. Another thing is you have tons of samples in here. You can actually type in, type in what you're looking for, and it will filter right through them. Then, of course, if you have this click, this is the MIDI icon. Whatever key you hit, it's going to actually update and show you that waveform for that particular sample.
It looks as if
And now come along. And now come along.
when you come around.
Come back from where I've
The
been.
most dangerous criminal.
I've had enough travel. Genius of evil.
The most dangerous criminal.
Pretty cool, pretty nice. And again, if you go back into the vertical mode, you can actually zoom in on this. I don't know why you'd want to zoom in super huge, but that's pretty cool that you can do that. And
Come back.
Come back. The most dangerous criminal.
and then, of course, you can look at your velocity curve, so you can move that over here. You can, zoom in on this thing. I don't know why. It's kind of, there's a few little things here. I can't seem to get it to go all the way to the right. I would like a little bit of space here to the far right. I don't like the way it just kind of bleeds out there. But you can see it says select and it says velocity. So you can actually adjust these from here as well. Again, you can select individual ones like that, or you can just, highlight all these and drag a bunch of them down or drag a bunch of them up, do whatever you need to do. Same with velocity, or you can also do the thing where you, see, it's like I can't see all the way to the right. It's like it's cutting, the screen's cutting off there. I would like to see all my samples. I would like to just see the same. See how I see the beginning of the keyboard? I'd like to see the end of the keyboard over here. That's kind of annoying. So in the vertical mode, you can do all the exact same stuff. You can do the, distribute the velocity there. I can do that. That's fine. But like, what's all this shit? What's going on here with that? Like, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on with that. That's kind of a weird fucking thing. I don't know. Control A, yeah, so we can distribute all this stuff exactly like we can with the keys. I don't know what's going on with the far right of the screen. That's kind of annoying. Hit Control A, distribute keys. So yeah, there it is. How do I get the, yeah, see, that's kind of annoying. Okay, so we've got it back now. Yeah, that's annoying. I don't know why I can't see the far right of the screen. It's like I don't like how I can't see. I would like to see my entire... So that's a little funky. But if we put it on the right here, again, there's two views. There's going to be the vertical view and then the horizontal view. And then, of course, the velocity grid and the select grid. Those are pretty much the different ways of looking at the multi-sample. Don't forget you can create groups. One more thing I quickly wanted to go over, and then we'll close this out, is if you right-click here, you can hit clear and clear the whole multi-sample out. I'm going to go ahead and open the browser here, and we got a bunch of these selected. If we just drag them in, like I said, it's going to automatically start on C1 and put everything on a single key, which is actually a really good default. But if we drag them in, and then we have the, not the vertical, but the horizontal. You got to be in horizontal mode. If you drag these in, they're going to drag in individual keys, but if you drag them all the way to the names and you drop them on the names, it will position every single sample on C3 for the root, basically have it so every sample covers all the keys on the keyboard. And then, of course, once you're there, you can always right-click and go distribute keys equally, and then it's going to be the default.
Hong Kong.
Because
Come on, let's get to headquarters.
But if you ever find yourself, wanting to drag in, let's say you just want to do some layer stuff and you just want to, just a couple samples and you want to layer them up real quick, rather than just drag them in like this, just drag them to the name column and then they're automatically layered. Then, of course, you can go over here, and then you can go to your zone logic, and you can hit round robin or always play.
I'm not afraid of it.
All right, one more super quick little side note here. Now, if you're switching between these three algorithms and you're holding down a note and playing a continuous loop, you're not going to notice anything changing until you let up on that note and then basically restart the loop. So, for example, I have this repitch. I'm going to go ahead and switch to textures, do some aggressive changing of the parameters, and then you'll notice that nothing's going to happen, okay? So just a quick little side note is these three algorithms, if you're, they do not change real time if you're involved in a key plane or a continuous loop. You have to let up on the key and basically reset the envelope. That's pretty much it. That's the multi-sampler. Hopefully I covered enough. Just remember this thing is super powerful. You can slam a shitload of samples into it. I mean, I don't know. How many samples can you put in here? Let's go ahead and put all those in there. I'm going to try to stuff this thing and see how many I can fit in here. See, I don't like that. I don't like not being able to have a definitive end. I would like a definitive end here. That would be pretty good. This multi-sampler, I'm very happy with it. I think it's a masterpiece of a sampler, and I think it's an incredible addition to the Bitwig DAW for sure. A couple of things, like I say, I would like a definitive edge over here for the sampler, but everything else I've absolutely love about this multi-sample. I think it's an unbelievable addition to the Bitwig studio arsenal and whatnot. Anyway, Chill Computer Guy, if you haven't already, please subscribe, pound that thumbs up, tell a friend about the channel. Remember, these videos are not for beginners, they're not for experts, they're for everybody. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, tell a friend about the channel, share this on social media, and yeah, check out Bitwig 2.4. If you haven't upgraded, it's definitely worth it to get into this new sampler. Your ability to layer stuff and to organize all your samples is unbelievable. So definitely check it out. Chill Computer Guy. Thanks for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye now.